honorable to be than I am. I'm just a guy who goes along.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you did back in World War II.
Well, I was aerial photographer, and well, I was first when I went in. I joined the Navy, and I got discharged because I was colorblind. So then a friend and, well, a lot of us in Detroit went down to then enlist in the Army Air Force. And two of us made it, my good friend Don Bright and myself. And
that was 1943, or?
That, well, we joined in 42, but they didn't call us in to 43.
You were enlisted in 43?
Yeah, well, they told me to go home and let me know when to report.
Let me put this underneath you. All right.
And so then I reported January of 43 and went to Camp Custer near Battle Creek, Michigan. Then I was sent to St. Pete, Florida to live in a pup tent on the beach. They put us on a beach down there.
And at some point you went overseas.
I went overseas after I was trained as a 50 caliber machine gun repair person. When it malfunctioned, I had to figure out why. And then I was sent to Buckley Air Force Base. I come back to Detroit to learn how to correct the Norden bomb sight. Then I went back to Lowry Air Force Base, and they wanted me to go to photography school. I thought that was great. I would never see action or anything. So anyway, they put us over in Utah, I forgot what base it was, to form the 460th Bomb Group. Then when we're all assigned, had maximum, then we were transferred to Chatham Air Force Base, Savannah, Georgia. And then we were flying from Savannah down to, I can't think of the place in Brazil, to scan the coastline for submarines and stuff. Then we'd come back, and on the way back or on the way down, we would land in Havana, and then pick up from there and go down to Brazil and do the same thing on the way back. And then after we got training, and I know we went over and I'd have to find my notebook, the dates and so on and so forth. But the air crew flew to Brazil and then landed in the Azores. And the ground crew went to Norfolk, Virginia to come over by boat. And when I was in the Azores, about 4 or 5 days, I was called into the commander's office, and he said I wasn't supposed to fly over. I was supposed to come by boat. So lo and behold, I back to the country, the United States. Then they sent me up to Norfolk, and then I went on a boat to go back over. And the ground crew was still there. So then I went over to Libya, and we were there a short time. Then we moved over to Spinazzola, Italy, to the Berry Flats, and that was, we got over there in January, where it was all muddy and knee-deep, and had a struggle. Then we got the airstrip, done, and then we started flying our missions. And I was assigned to go on reconnaissance work to take pictures of the target that they want to bomb. And then after we come back, they would pick out, do my pictures, and pick out which bomb run we had to go on. And then I was assigned to a bomb group, not a bomb group, well, the B-24s to go on the bomb route to help the bombardier track in the right which they wanted me to go on, and where I flew into the target, and they thought that would be the best way to go into the target. So I had to take pictures of the bombing, of planes going down, and try to get pictures of all the bombs that were released on the different planes in our squadron, and then take pictures constantly as we come off the bomb run. And after we got near the border of Italy again, then I had a chance to sit down. I run from the bomb bay because they wanted pictures of all the bombs released from the bomb bay. Then I went back and took pictures out of the waste windows and see what action I could get. I either go to the right or to the left window, and then I had a camera.
What year was this?
This is 44.
So a lot more than you were expecting when you signed up.
I never thought I had that kind of asking to do, you know, asked me to do what I did. But I enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah. And so at some point the plane you were in went down.
I have a hard time talking about that.
Imagine.
I was the only one that got out of the plane. Wish I could talk about it.
Yeah, it's okay.
The front of the ship was blown completely apart. Everybody up in front of the bomb bay was destroyed. So I got out of the bomb bay. I was in the bomb bay when the front got hit. Had a piece of shrapnel in his cheek here. So I went back and I told the two waist gunners that there's no plane up in front of us. Everything was shot out way. And I told them I got to go back to the tail gunner and get him, because he wouldn't know, because we had no communications. Everything was shot out. So the two waist gunners jumped out. I went back, knocked on the door, and I opened it and told the tail gunner that the plane is no good. And it's just him and I and the ball turret man. And so we went back to the ball turret, and we tried to get him out. God, I couldn't take him. To jump. And I said, I'll jump if he jumps. And he says, I'm right behind you. So I went to the waist window, and he come toward me, and as I went to jump out, there was another explosion where the fuselage and the wing met, and it threw me back into the plane. After that, I don't know what happened. I only surmise that the tail gunner must have picked me up and threw me out and pulled my ripcord. And I don't know if he stayed in the plane to try to work further to get the ball turret man out or not. And when I hit the ground, I was knocked out when that threw me back in the plane. And when I couldn't see when I hit the ground, and I was a little bit groggy then, and all I faintly heard was somebody yelling at me to get up, get up. And when I tried, I couldn't get up because both my ankles were broken and both my hands. And I was bleeding from my eyes. I couldn't see. And it turned out to be a farmer, German farmer. And he realized, I guess, the condition I was in, and he picked me up and carried me to his house. And his wife, he sat me in a nice, comfortable chair with arms on it, and his wife started doing washing out my eyes, I guess, or something. I don't know what she used, but when she was doing that, I felt something being put in my lap, and I kind of jerked or something. He says, "Don't worry," he says, "it's our baby." He put his baby in my lap. Then after she, he said, "There's a German field medical station nearby," and he says, "I gotta go there because I can't try to keep you," and so on, for it, because if we did, we'd be exterminated by the SS deal. And so they come back, 2 of them, and they carried me to their medical station and taped up my feet and my hands, and they took the plaque out of my cheek, and they said they were going to put me in a hospital, which they did. And there was a lieutenant, he was talking to me, and he was in dire pain. He said he was burnt all over his face and all over his arms and everything. And so I guess I surmise he bailed out someplace. So he had to then carry me and put me on a truck. And then we both wound up in the hospital. And the hospital was a old people's home in the it's the forest of some, I can't think of the name. I got that all written down.
1944, this was?
In 44 of July, 44. And there was one doctor they turned that old people's home into a hospital for the down flyers that were hurt, injured. And they were both taken there, and the doctor looked at me and he says, "I will bring your eyesight back." It took about 6 months, and I could see faintly as it come back. make out images and stuff. And when I got my eyesight back, I went to this lieutenant's room, and he was a mess. And the German doctor was taking care of him, and I would see how they were grafting skin from here to here, and all over, usually from one hand down here, grafting skin. And he asked the pilot if he would sign a paper that, and the doctor even telling everybody that the war is over. Actually, it's just Germans were not going to win anything, and he asked him, the pilot, to sign a piece of paper to let him continue putting his face back together. Because he said if the other doctor is seated, he says they might, be his face scarred up or something like that. So he consented to it. So I don't know whatever happened to him, but he had some beard, and he had, I remember, one eyebrow back unshaved, and the doctor told him that he would grow a beard when he got through, and he'd have one of his ears back normally shaped. And then I didn't know, because after that well, by the way, this German doctor was under lock and key. He couldn't leave the hospital. And
what about you? You could leave? Or?
No, we were always locked in. The orderlies in the hospital were English prisoners of war. They used them as orderlies. And then before I left, in come a brigadier general, and as I understand, he wasn't a flyer. He had something to do with the ground crews. He was stationed in England at 8th Air Force, and the first mission he went on was shot down, and he ended up in the hospital. Nothing was wrong with him, and they gave him a suite of rooms and gave him a Volkswagen Beetle. He could come and go as a police to the nearest town on service. So they shipped me out to an interrogation camp, and I wasn't very cooperative. And after a couple of weeks, they sent me to Buchenwald. And there was about 7 Americans there, and British and Canadian prisoners of war. And the total was about maybe 72, 73 of us there. And they always, I don't know where they had the others, but I presume they had in the same place that I was in. You couldn't see. We couldn't have any daylight, or it was all nighttime. If you had to go to the bathroom, it was always when it was at night, and that's the only time you could go. And if we were in a little sail cubbyhole, if you had to go, you just had to go right there. And you couldn't lay down because you didn't have room to stretch either way. The only time If you stood up, you could stand up straight because the ceiling was a little higher than your head. And they would take me every day into the commandant's office, who was Colonel Colonel Koch, and his wife was Elsie Koch. And anybody that ever come in there and they had tattoos on them, she would have that tattoo skin taken off, and she made lampshades out of them. Thank God I didn't have any. And I had a friend, his name was Saul Solomon, out of New York. He had tattoos, so I don't know whatever happened to him. And I would be taken to the commandant's office, and there would be 3 or 4 guards around, and Elsie Koch was there. And she would sit on the arm of my chair, and she was the one that questioned me. Nobody else questioned me. She would question me. And I stayed still stubborn, and every once in a while you'd hear a gun go off, and I was told that was another one that wasn't truthful to her. And I don't believe it was, but they just shot guns to try to force me, that I would get scared. And so I don't know how many days I went in there. One day I went in there, and she was a real gorgeous woman. She was blonde, and she wore skirts or dress, and they were only about 6 inches below her crotch. And I'll be honest, I kept looking at her legs, and it was disturbing me. So I grabbed one of her legs by the knee. She jumped up, and she had a pair of gloves that were stitched around, and they were kind of sharp. She started to slap me all over my face. And I knew that if I retaliated against it, that those guards or somebody, I would be like a pretzel, or they'd beat the hell out of me. So I just stood there and let her beat me for about 5-10 minutes. Then they took me back to my cell, and then I figured it was maybe 3-5 days after that they shipped me back to another interrogation camp. And finally they gave up on me, I guess. So then they shipped me to Stalag 4 up on the Baltic Sea. And I was there till January, it was either the 1st or 2nd, and the Russians were knocking on the door. So Commandant, they had 8 compounds there, and there roughly was 2,000 prisoners in each compound. And when I first walked in, you could see about 5 guys were hanging around the gate that went in the compound. And they looked pretty good to me, healthy and everything. Had weight, so on and so forth. And then I looked further, and I could see guys who were skinnier, shabby clothes on and everything. And they